If there's a hot political issue in Brevard, we're talking about it today. I sat down in the studio with my friend and frequent debate opponent, Bill Mick, host of the top-rated Bill Mick Live radio program on WMMB, 1240 AM. Bill's a Tea Partier, I'm a pragmatist and Central Florida swing voter. So what do we make of Congressman Bill Posey's role in the government shutdown over Obamacare, the one that sent thousands of Kennedy Space Center workers home without pay? What's next for a proposed sales tax for Brevard public schools? And is West Melbourne playing politics again with its police department? Bill and I tackled those issues and more. Check it out. All right, Bill, it's time we caught up on some issues here. The biggest one of the past month at least has to have been the government shutdown, the standoff over Obamacare, Bill Posey's position on it. You're more of a conservative or Tea Party, or I'm more of a moderate. What was your take on it?
Well, I spent the first hour of my show, the Thursday after this Wednesday night vote, screaming about where do we go now? What do we do? We've been abandoned by the Republican Party. Ronald Reagan said the Democrats abandoned him and he became a Republican. Where do we go now that the Republicans have abandoned us? You had a few stalwarts that tried to stand for strong conservative principles. They tried to force a negotiating position on the Obama administration and the Democrats in the Senate. And throughout, as much as the Obama mantra was, we need them to compromise, every time compromise was offered by the right, the response from the White House was, we're not going to compromise. You're going to give us what we want, end of story, which is traditionally what the left does in Washington. We had Republicans standing up. We had the so-called shutdown, which basically inconvenienced veterans who were going to Washington to look at the World War II memorial, and not a lot else, in all honesty. Any of the federal employees that were furloughed are getting the back pay when they get back to work. Their next paycheck is going to be a good one. They will have suffered really nothing and had a 2-week paid vacation. Not that I want those folks to suffer, but if we're going to have a shutdown, let's do a real shutdown. And this fake debt crisis that they had to have resolved by last Thursday, we had plenty of money in to cover the interest on the federal debt. It was going to be fine. There's plenty of tax dollars rolling in. It's a presidential decision as to which checks get written. It was all on Barack Obama's head. What did the Republicans do? They took that pressure off of him through the end of the year, into the middle of January. They let him borrow money up through February, and now they're going to have to face this again in another 3-4 months. So what do we get out of it? Not a darn thing. So where do conservatives go for representation? Could Ted Cruz start a third party and pull enough people away to have an impact? What I ended up urging my audience to do is defund the Republican Party. At the national level, at the state level, and sadly, at the local level. No Lincoln Day dinner for the Brevard Republican Executive Committee. No Republican picnic that they hold every 2 years. Don't give them a dime for anything, because that's the only way they're going to carry the conservative message up that they feed back to us when they want elected. But darn if they don't not act like it when they get up there. Bill Posey, a notable exception. He voted properly on this. But even he and I had a bit of a disagreement on the air the next morning because, Bill, we got to work within the party. We got to change things from within the party. I get that. I've been preaching it for 13, 14 years on the radio. But
That's what he said?
Yeah, but we're getting no results. So what do we do? If we don't start talking to them with money, stop funding the party machine that tries to run over the grassroots Republican, we're going to see more of the same. So we're really frustrated right now.
Well, I was frustrated with Bill Posey for his position, not because of their failure to get what they wanted, but because he took the position that he did to begin with. We endorsed Bill Posey because he defended space programs. We even endorsed Mitt Romney because we thought that he'd be more responsible on budget issues. I think
there's no doubt of that.
Well, I was very prepared for Congress to come in, hold out, take a hard position for budget balancing things. But standing out and taking a stand on Obamacare, it just didn't fit, and it seemed like it was too big of a risk for this district. I think that when it came to Obamacare, I didn't have any problem whatsoever with Bill Posey voting on principle, his principles, even if I disagreed with him necessarily, 40 times to repeal Obamacare. But when it comes time to balancing the budget, trying to hold out and knowing you were risking a government shutdown that would send home thousands of contractors and civil servants, the contractors did not get repaid, and that was one of the risks, to me, that was equivalent to somebody puts up a house for sale, I pull up in a pickup truck, throw rocks at the house. When he comes out, I say, give me your house for this pickup truck. And when he says no, I accuse him of not negotiating. So I didn't think that was a very realistic thing. He was never going to make that deal.
Well, but there was no negotiation at all, and you had to take a hard line stance to start with. There are so many exemptions for unions and certain businesses to not start Obamacare, yet the mandate is going to go into effect for individuals like you and me. Congress is exempt. They went back with various versions of changing all of those and saying, let's not implement it for the individual yet. The president said, no, we're going to do it for everybody, except those people that we've granted special privilege to. Okay, let's make sure Congress has to abide by the same plan without subsidies that the American people has to. No, we're not going to do that either because that affects us. Doesn't matter what they do to us. The Republicans tried to negotiate here. They offered concessions, and they were turned down every time. My question is, do they have credibility when they go to fight anything else? The next thing Barack Obama says they're going to try to attack is immigration.
Okay.
Can the Republicans stand up and fight on that for what they think we need?
What do you think Marco Rubio is going to go on immigration? I mean, he was one of the architects of this bill that, you know, the people on the right wound up hating him for it. Not hating him for it necessarily, but didn't like the legislation. Is he going to flip-flop on this and suddenly be against the plan that he helped really write and pass in the Senate?
Yes.
You think so?
I think if he's going to have credibility with the people he considers to be his base. If Ted Cruz has taken that momentum that Marco Rubio had last year, Ted Cruz owns that momentum now. He seems to be the stalwart senator who, as a young freshman maverick senator going into Washington, will stand up for his principles. He won that mantle right now. Marco Rubio kind of lost it because there were provisions in Rubio's bill that appeared to be amnesty or amnesty-like. And that will not play with the conservative base, though not like things like in-state tuition for children of illegal immigrants, those kind of things, even if the kids have grown up here. So there will be provisions that if he doesn't moderate, if you will, back to the conservative side of that spectrum, Marco has lost a little luster on that star. I don't think it's gone yet. I think he can still serve us well, and I think he does right now. I'm also, and you get this as a member of the media too, the daily emails, sometimes 3 or 4 daily emails from the Rubio camp or from the other camps saying, look at what we're doing. I don't read them anymore. I don't care. I look at the news. I pay attention to what's actually happening. I don't want to hear the rhetoric. It's not campaign season. Stop sending me 100 emails a day to tell me what a great job you're doing in the U.S. Senate. You know,
if anything has come out of this, I think that it is clearing the way a little bit more. I know you don't want to hear this, but I think it actually improves the chances of somebody like a Chris Christie.
You're right. I don't want to hear it.
Because, you know, or somebody in the Jeb Bush, or maybe even from the Democratic side, you know, a Hillary Clinton, you know, from that kind of Southern Democratic kind of camp. Because I think for us in the middle, I know people like Ted Cruz. They must, because otherwise he wouldn't be getting so much audience attention. Mm-hmm. I look at him and I think I would rather elect Willy Wonka to be president than Ted Cruz. But by comparison, it makes people like a Chris Christie, you know, or a Jeb Bush look really, really sane and really, really competent by comparison.
See, I disagree.
And the reaction that Cruz gets from the left is just as berserk. They dig in more and it makes them look just as not unrealistic, unreasonable to me.
Well, what people like and see in Ted Cruz is that he's standing for the principles he believes in. He voices the principles that these people believe in, and he cared enough to stand and follow his principles with his actions in office. You hear the Jeb Bushes, the Chris Christies, compromise is the way, you have to compromise. People see that as a compromise on ideals and compromising on principles as opposed to compromising on methodology. And if they could show the difference between that, maybe they could win a vote or two. But the folks that I talk to every day, the folks that I hear from every day, are very frustrated that they don't feel they're represented any longer. And a guy like Ted Cruz is representing them. And so far, Bill Posey is too, with his votes, it seems to be. Although Bill and I have had some disagreements here and there, but I think Bill's doing, by and large, the job this district needs him to do.
I think he's going to have some dancing to do in the next election, answering to the folks that he was going to defend.
I don't know
in the
that the Democrats
industry.
can bring a viable candidate against him, though.
Well,
Bill Posey's in Congress as long as he wants to keep working there.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with that. Let's talk about another issue that you and I didn't necessarily see eye to eye on. It's been in the news quite a bit lately, and that is the effort up in Titusville to redevelop the Miracle City Mall. Mm-hmm. I believe the North Brevard Economic Development Zone they're going to commit, what was it, $6 million? $6.5 million to help tear down the old mall, run new utilities there, build some parking lots, and build a park across the street along US 1 there. I'm warming to the idea as long as this is done transparently and done cautiously, and the private developer is putting up as many millions as they are planning to do. Okay, if that's a difference maker for that area, okay. You have a different view. What's your take?
This is a ballpark that you and I don't play in. What's it take to be able to borrow $50 or $60 million? Is the $6.5 million a down payment on the developer borrowing the rest of that money? I don't know. I don't play in that world. You know, I'll worry about what's a down payment for a jet ski.
Right.
Now we're in my realm, and I love that one. But the whole idea is, if this were a viable mall, would it not still be active as it was? If there's the customer base for that mall there, would a developer with his own dollars not be coming in and saying, I want to make something of this because I see a market base here that's going to support the kind of thing I'm wanting to put in? It doesn't make sense for government to jump in with tax dollars that are being diverted to just one part of the county to take $6.5 million and put it into a project that has already proven it doesn't work. When did the last store move out of there? Last anchor store was Penny's, and it's been gone how long? I'm not sure. But you know, when those stores leave, what's to entice new businesses to come there? Is there a population base that is just living in Titusville and looking for a place to shop? Or where are they going now? They're going to Orange County, they're going to Daytona, they're coming to Central Brevard. Where are they going to shop? Merritt Island, maybe?
I think when I look at that, I see an effort to offer an incentive, right? That it could be the difference maker, that cost of going in and redeveloping that project may not be worth the return exactly, that could be the difference maker between getting somebody to come in and somebody not getting come in. It's a big property. Potentially, dozens of businesses could be operating there, could help with quality of life, take away some blight that has discouraged other development. And it's different from other things that we've seen, like with the EDC and others, trying to offer incentives down the road for startups, right? This is a big deal. But I do get the concerns people have about all of that tax money being tied up and not coming back to the general fund to pay for lots of different things.
Before they've ever collected the first dollar of those North Brevard Economic Development Zone dollars, they've committed $6.5 million of them to that project.
Well, there are a couple of safeguards. Do they seem like they're good to you? The way it would work, from what I understand, is the developer has an option to buy the property, isn't going to make the purchase until they have tenants signed. Until that happens, they won't get any money. The city of Titusville will actually borrow the money and distribute it as work gets done by the developer on the property. And this economic development zone will use money that at first will be coming in from that new power plant in Port St. John to pay off the bond. So it's kind of this three-step process. What else would have to happen here to make somebody who doesn't like CRAs, doesn't like these kinds of incentives, be more comfortable with it?
You look at that situation, and isn't it the truth with every time you and I get together and we talk somehow government funding something, whether it's schools, whether it's county projects, whether it's something like this, the funding is so convoluted. The involved parties are so convoluted. The city of Titusville is borrowing the money, but it's being backed up by the North Brevard Economic Development Zone. So there's a guarantee that that money is going to be paid, that $6.5 million, whatever it is. The developer ultimately taking some risk anyway if he's borrowing $50, $60 million to make it happen. But the whole idea is the proper role of government in business. The actual proper role is they don't have one. Get out of the way. Let business be business. I'm concerned that there is no market base for this, that there is not enough support level for what they're wanting to put in. With a mall that's already failed there, with a couple of malls that have had problems up there, how do you justify? If I'm looking at the developer, are you going to loan him your money? Am I going to loan him my money to put this mall in and think, you know what, I'm pretty sure he's going to make a go of it and I'm going to get all my money back? Well, if that government guarantee's not out there, it ain't happening at all. It's a problem, and I don't know that you can make me more comfortable with it.
Well, I'm pulling for Titusville. I think that they do have some real potential. I mean, even if things level out and at the much downsized level at Kennedy Space Center that they have been, it's still about 10,000 people working out there. There is potential for development and growth if Central Florida comes back. It's hard to see exactly how it all fits in from that market perspective with a mall, but I guess the developer must have some sense of how this all works and some way of measuring the potential.
People who've been in Brevard a long time have maybe a better perspective than I do. I didn't get here till '98. Love the place. I'm glad it's my home. But I didn't go through the shutdown of Gemini or Apollo and then the transition into the shuttle. We are looking at another 3-5 years, maybe longer, before we're looking at manned space flight from the Space Center again. Once that happens, you're going to see growth come back to Brevard. Sure, you're going to see some things happen, provided we can maintain being Florida's space coast, being the space coast of the United States. You've got launches happening with these private launch developers all over the country, all over the world. So what do we do to stay in front on space? Hey, don't get me wrong. I think the Titusville area is beautiful. You drive along the river in Titusville, it's one of the nicest places that you're going to see. It's absolutely gorgeous looking out through there. I want to see it grow, but I don't think the justification's there for dumping tax dollars into it today.
Another issue, school tax. The Brevard Public Schools, their school board, they haven't approved this officially yet, but they're looking at giving us another opportunity to decide as whether we should approve another, what is it, a 0.5 cent per dollar, a half-cent sales tax to fund facilities for the public schools. Do you think that's a good idea?
I'm not convinced it's a good idea.
Good idea to ask at least?
My problem with that is no's never no. We just told them no last election, but now they're ready to come back and do it again. If they'd have skipped the last election cycle, if they'd have made the cuts they needed to make, which we'll acknowledge they've made some cuts. They even cut administration where they told us they couldn't cut because they were so lean. But they always compared that to themselves. No. Or they compared that to other districts where we're leaner than they are. No, you can be leaner than you are. This is like losing weight. You're in a battle against yourself. You're not in a battle against some other district. What we need to see is credibility out of the superintendent and the school board as they move this message forward. Brian Bingley misfired, stumbled out of the blocks as soon as this came up a couple of weeks ago at a school board meeting. And his comments were that if they didn't vote to put this tax in front of the voters, that it was like a war on math and physics. Not the language you want to bring to me, Brian Bingley. Matter of fact, get out of the way. Stop being the spokesman because you're not good at it. The language you need to bring is, here are the real problems. Here where our funding is going now. Here's what we've done to correct the spending problems and the corruption we had in spending in the past. Here is what the real needs are, and here's what has to be cut if we don't have the monies we need. Here's the actual numbers of what we need. Here's the actual cuts that are going to happen, that are going to come about if we don't get the money. Make the argument logically, make it in a sense of cooperation. Don't set it up as a war, because we'll go to war and you'll lose. Don't set it up as a war. Set it up as we're part of this community. Brevard's people, I'm not unhappy with the education my children got in Brevard schools. I'm tickled to death with that. Most people I know are. But we're also tired of the constant mantra, forgive us more tax dollars. It started in the good years under Richard the Sky's Falling to Patry when the money was flowing like crazy and he kept telling us how much more they needed because he wanted to spend more and more and more, and the board let him do it, and they borrowed to the hilt. They're having to service that debt now. They've let things go. They've let building maintenance and those kind of things go. We're not convinced as voters that they're managing the dollars properly, and we're not convinced of the need. They're going to have to show us the need, and they're going to have to do it in a very somber and cooperative tone as opposed to the stance they've taken in the past.
I think that's a really good point. How do you communicate this across an entire county, not just to the parents who showed up to your workshops last time to watch the PowerPoint to show where the money would go, but to people who don't have kids in school, people who don't know any teachers, people who haven't even thought about schools in years. This is a conservative county, but it's also a generous county. And if you make the case, look, folks, we're in a position where, yes, we do have debt payments, we do have these needs. We can't pay for both. In order to fix our schools and keep our word to the people who lent us the money, we're going to have to reach deeper and deeper into operating dollars, continue to cut librarians and aides and sports and activities, and we really just don't want to do that. We really just, if you would just pass this sales tax, everybody would pay this, including tourists, illegal aliens, and everybody else. It would spread the burden, and it would give us more than we need, and we'll take good care of your kids. Do you think that something like that would work?
I think they have to be very careful how they craft the message. If they craft it well, it may resonate with voters. There will be a core who will never support another school tax.
Well, that's true.
Question is, can they win over the conservative voter who does appreciate schools, does support education, but has been lied to about where money was spent in the past? Can you build that level of trust? You're not going to do it with words of war.
Let's move on to another topic. Sure. West Melbourne is a subject of conversation again, and goodness, it involves the police department and a city council person that we've heard of before. Stephanie Ely, a city councilwoman, is caught up in this weird situation where a police report says she packed an old 2-year-old broken TV into a new TV box from one that she had ordered online, took it to the store, got a refund. Actually, she tried it at 2 different stores, finally got one in West Melbourne. Somewhere along the way, a police officer caught wind of this, phoned a radio to supervisor. They came down, took a report. Now they're in an awkward situation where she seems to be in trouble, and the police are trying to show that they're not playing favorites. What's your take on all this?
That sadly, under Richard Wiley, the West Melbourne Police Department is incompetent or corrupt, and it's got to be one of the two. Stephanie Ely, in the initial story, tried to return a 2-year-old television in a box that belonged to one that she'd purchased from Target online. And now, through her attorney, in a subsequent story from Florida Today, says she was trying to take advantage of an extended warranty. That's plausible. The sad truth is, we don't know what happened because the police report is the worst piece of police work I've seen since the charging document in the George Zimmerman case. It is incomplete. It reeks of incompetence. Chief Wiley, in your initial story in Florida Today, said they prepared the report for information because we don't get involved in disputed returns. Well, this wasn't a simple disputed return. This is a potential theft by fraud of $400. Now, it was a day later that was reported in, or 2 days later, reported in Florida Today that, well, no, this was an extended warranty situation. That comes from Ely's lawyer, probably the most prominent criminal defense attorney in Brevard County, Greg Eisenbinger. Great reputation, guy does his job, he's a bulldog. Did she need a bulldog? Now, the caveat there is that's Stephanie Ely's brother. So yeah, I'm going to go to my brother, the best criminal defense attorney in town, if I think I may need one too. Let's say he's laid out a plausible story. And it's entirely possible Ely didn't do any wrongdoing, but she clumsily handled a situation and politically very inept at handling it because 2 answers to Florida Today, and this is a non-story.
Has she been charged with anything?
No, not a thing. Because the investigation by the West Melbourne Police Department, under the direction of Chief Wiley, was less than competent, or it was a cover-up. The initial report, he says, we filed a report for informational purposes because we don't get involved in these things, but yet that informational report did not include the name of the councilwoman involved. He said he did it for transparency. How is that transparent?
If you didn't name the person
exactly.
who was the subject of the report.
At least 4 police officers on the scene at the Target store when this became an issue. There is a report written by one of them, and apparently the most junior of them. If you send a deputy chief and a captain to a location like this, you know you've got a city council person involved. You want an in-depth, knowledgeable report. You want statements from each of them. There's no statement from Ely, although the initial report says that the command staff talked to everyone involved. Well, apparently not, because Ely says she hadn't talked to the police. So did they talk to everyone involved or not? Did they do a thorough investigation? You know, they fired Brian Locke, admittedly a dear friend of mine, over a situation where he properly investigated a friend of his who was a commander under his command at the police department who had stolen drugs out of the evidence locker at the police department because he had an addiction to painkillers. It was not criminal evidence, it was just evidence collected in the course of other things that had gone on, car wrecks, unattended deaths, whatever. So it didn't impact any criminal prosecution. But Brian Locke investigated that, properly reported it, submitted it to the state attorney for a judgment on whether to prosecute or not. And this was a friend of his who worked for him. He did his job, did it well, had the integrity that we all know Brian Locke to have, and Stephanie Ely and the troublemaker from Tennessee pushed it through city council to fire Brian Locke. He did the job. He submitted the report. He did an investigation. We don't see that level of investigation here. So Chief Wiley, knowing that he stepped in and was hired into a political situation, he is either very inept or very corrupt, and we need to know which one it is.
You know what I wonder? I wonder if they were preparing for the possibility that she could be vindictive, as she's been in the past with Brian Locke, if she is eventually charged, that she might accuse this of being some kind of hatchet job by the police, that perhaps, you know, then she's going to try to get back at them in some fashion. It reminds me of when Mike Hazlitt, who joined Ely in trying to run out the old police chief, when he was pulled over by police in West Melbourne, and the first thing out of his mouth was, well, I'm going to punish you all, I'm going to cut your budget, I'm going to come after the cops. And they said, I think we're going to need a supervisor here.
Absolutely.
And, well, you saw what happened. He was among the people who kind of took out, you know, vengeance on the police department, using both city council campaign politics as a reason, and then using the situation with the drug addicted commander as the final reason for that. I just wonder if there isn't more to know here and a longer tail to this story.
My first question would be, being the investigator that I was, remember I left the job of law enforcement because I properly investigated a couple of our own people. Two of them busted for dealing dope. And a year and a half later, one of them's daddy was named chief of police. He was the chief of detectives at the time I arrested his kid. So I've been through this. I know what a thorough investigation is. I was responsible for reviewing the reports of all of our officers, many of them senior to me and higher ranking than me, in the drug unit, because I knew what it took to get a report, make it thorough, and get it through the court system with the information you needed. This report at West Melbourne falls far short of that, and the oath that they swore to protect and to serve didn't say, unless it's a city councilman. This is due a thorough investigation, and you have to have the integrity to do the job. End of story. They have to do that. If they don't, Wiley needs to go.
Bill Mick, thank you so much for joining us.
Always fun, Matt Reed.
So where do you stand on those issues? Who's right, Bill or me? As always, we welcome your feedback. Email us a letter to the editor at letters@floridatoday.com. That's our program. I'm Matt Reed. We'll see you right here next week on WEFS and FloridaToday.com.